I am nervous. Hello and welcome to whatever this is, or isn't, or will be otherwise known as To Whom It May Concern. I can't believe that I'm doing this again. And most importantly, as you can clearly see, I can't believe that I'm doing it like this. And for those of you who can't see me, with myself on a screen. And I suppose this is an experiment of sorts. I don't know how I feel about it, and I don't know if I will actually do it, but I figured that it would be so much more easier to make, or it would make a lot more sense, let's say. It doesn't make it easier. Although perhaps it does. Perhaps it does make it easier to reconnect with the audience on the other side. If I feel like I can see what you're seeing, or I can at the very least know that you see me on the other side of the screen, whenever this letter, this online video letter reaches you. And that's what I really always have loved about this podcast is while I am recording or while I am just speaking my mind, it just gives me so much joy to imagine you on the other side pressing play and hearing that familiar intro and then hearing whatever is on my mind. And I'm incredibly grateful for it. My friends will tell you, if my friends tell you anything about me, it is that I love sending long voice messages, and I don't know why. I mean, I'm pretty sure that this podcast episode could be about exactly that. That very idea of why do I enjoy so much to send a voice message into the ether, so to speak, and then wait for a response. And maybe you don't get it the same way, right? Maybe I can tell you one thing: my friends don't reply in that way. My friends don't like sending audio notes back. Some of them do, but mostly not. What they like to do and how we like to communicate typically is with text, but it's so much easier. And I'm going to be honest, like, it's so much easier really to just start talking for me personally, because then I don't really think. I think that's the thing. I don't think while I speak. I just speak. It may be the performance artist in me, it may be the poet in me, it may just be an effective, I don't know, growing up a child, the fourth child in a row, never, not really heard, so to speak, right? Not really given that room to speak or to express myself. So now, whenever I get the chance, and especially no matter if it is in this format, and if the reception is delayed, I can, in fact, still feel like this has some purpose, right? And I can compare myself to people who don't, who get in front of a computer and they say, how could you possibly do this? I mean, you're just basically looking at yourself in the screen, and that's who you're talking to, and you're sending messages to people who you'll never probably meet. I'm like, yeah, but they hear my voice and they hear what I'm saying and they understand the words that I'm speaking, and in effect that in and of itself has value and has meaning, right? Who knows? Maybe it's a weird effect of the brain. Anyway, welcome to the podcast, and I honestly think that I've been missing this so much. I've been missing moments where just airing thoughts out, thoughts that have been in my mind, sort of going around in circles, right? And not really getting to any kind of conclusion, because it's really hard when all we're doing, or the space that they're living in, is in here and they're not out here. They're not out for us to really resonate with and hear ourselves. Or even, I feel like our brains are also so much more aware of what comes out of our mouth if we just think that somebody else is listening, right? And a lot of people don't really care, right? That's the other thing, is that I can imagine that for a lot of people, it doesn't really matter if somebody on the other side is listening. For a lot of people, it doesn't really matter if what I'm saying makes sense to you. So long as I'm saying it, so long as I'm taking space, so long as I hear my own voice, right, I can enjoy that. But I think there's really something to say about just needing to feel, right, like you are being heard, like you will be heard in today's world. time is time as the fourth dimension is for sure relative, because now for me will be now, it will be another now for you whenever you do hear these words that I'm saying currently. I'm sending them into the future whenever, wherever you're going to hear them. For me, that's time traveling. But anyway, I do digress. And that is the nature of this podcast. It is to digress. And the reason why I want to make it this way and why I just wanted to be like, you know what, I'm just going to do it, was because, okay, a couple of things. First off, it's been a while. It's been a year, more than a year, possibly even almost 2 years since the last time that I've done an episode for To Whom It May Concern. Reason behind it is I've been moving around a lot. I am currently in Berlin. I came here on a new job and now I have a new job. So I'm starting, effectively, I'm still onboarding and I'm still more or less arriving in Berlin. The great news is that Berlin has really proven to be a land of opportunity, so to speak. And I don't mean just opportunity in terms of reaping what you've sown. But what it feels like is that I've been exploring and I've been challenged. And it's so weird to say that out loud because it's one thing entirely to grow up challenging yourself, to grow up pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and saying, we can't be here, right? We can't get used to here. This can't be our reality. And then pushing yourself into the next moment and the next moment and the next moment onto what you wanted to be your reality, your dream. This was my reality, right? Like that was the life that I've lived. So for the most part, especially into adulthood, into young adulthood, and now into my 30s, that's been the path. The path has been, it's not here. Where is it? It's there. I can see it. It's there. We need to push towards there. And then I was pushing myself towards there. And I was sometimes even pushing myself beyond my capacity and beyond my limits because I was so taken by that path. And the path was to get out of my home country, to be a game developer, to make games for a living. And then all along that path, I realized that it might not have even truly been about that. It's might not have even been about leaving the country and exploring and kind of going beyond that really dependent state of being, right? Because small country, very tight-knit family, tight-knit culture, it's hard to leave it behind, really truly hard to leave it behind. I can't even begin to describe in the ways in which those roots and how deep those roots really go, right? And how in which those roots kind of keep you in that soil. And I don't even, can't even say grounded, but more like buried. And so it's very interesting for me, like now in my 30s, I'm looking back and I'm thinking, what actually drove me out of that? Like, what is the path? What was the path? What was I going for? And the answer seems to be, I wanted a place where I could tell stories uninhibited in the way that they came to me, or I felt like I wanted to tell them, and that there was an audience to listen. And it's so funny when I think about it like this. Perhaps somewhere at the core of me is this person that, or is this core identity that is a storyteller. And it took me 30 years to honestly see it, and then to truly understand like all the different mediums that have to come together for me to finally kind of make sense of it, make sense of the word, make sense of what it means, make sense of what it represents, and then see that it is just a reflection of who I am. And of course, we are not just one facet of being. We're so many facets of being, and we can be so many more things. So I could be a storyteller, I can be a game designer, I can be a podcaster, I can be a daughter, I can be in the future, right? So we can be so many things, and all those things are so complex in our brains. But I think some of those things ground us, some of those things lift us off, right? Like some of those things are catalysts, and some concepts, some identities are catalysts because it's something that you could never possibly be, but you actually need to be in motion in order for you to become that, right? It's like a verb, right? A noun versus a verb. A noun defines you, gives you shape, right? And then a verb gives you momentum, right? It forces you into momentum because otherwise it's not a verb, right? It's a noun. In that sense, that's what I mean. Some identities do ground you, they give you shape. And some identities give you motion. And storytelling gives me motion. Storytelling is my moving identity. If ever I am in one place and I'm not moving and I'm not jumping for joy, I'm not telling the story. Even right now, right? I am perhaps trying to assert myself. Perhaps I'm trying to tell you something, right? So I guess I don't really even need to explain it too deeply because that makes enough sense to me, at least. But I hope that it illustrates this idea of where have I been in the past year and a half, in the past 2 years, while I've been in that motion. Here comes the irony. While I've been in that motion, almost like spiraling in place, like going around in circles, chasing after my own tail, it's been hard to sit still and to truly then tell the story. Is that contradicting? Maybe. Because actually telling the story always required going up on stage, picking up the microphone, sometimes even being the first to do so, which was crazy to me because I was always such an introvert growing up. But something about that moment when you're on that stage, and even right now, pressed record. I'm here, I'm not moving, but now I'm forced, in a way, like I'm not forced, bad choice of words, called on to tell the story. And I suppose perhaps I've not given myself that space. I've not given myself the space to show up on stage and or get up on the soapbox and just tell the story, tell whatever I need to tell, say whatever it is that I need to say. Pause for thought. But it's interesting, really. I don't know if I will keep doing this, but let this be my reintroduction of myself. And also, for many of you, the first time that you actually get to see me, and you are in my most vulnerable place. You are seeing me exactly as I am. Years later, I am sort of easing into tonight. I really wanted to treat myself gently. I wanted to I suppose, give myself some space to be with myself, and to no surprise to anyone, probably, especially not my best friends, this is how I chose to do it. And I hope it does turn into something fruitful. And I hope that this recording is actually any good whatsoever, because it was a taste of, or a test, let's say, of what this could even look like into the future, right? That's why I didn't really put much effort into organizing my background and making sure that it is more presentable. But I feel like presentable is reality, and this is my reality. So without further ado, I do, in keeping with the theme of To Whom It May Concern, what would this podcast be if there was no journal to come back to? I want to introduce to you my latest one. This is the one I finished early this year. It's still in the works. I wanted to go back to the original purpose of the podcast, which was to read pieces of the entry, or just to read an entry, a random one. And I picked it earlier, and I said to myself, this is a perfect one to come back to. I thought it would be a very interesting one to share, because this particular journal was all about my journey in Berlin, and all about not just arriving here, but reconnecting with parts of myself that I didn't know could be really challenged still. And at the brink of sanity, so to speak, I think I met parts of me that I was proud of. I met parts of me that I was very scared of. I met parts of me that I understood I'd been so disconnected from for the longest of times, that I was genuinely grateful for having been challenged in that way, that I even realized that they were there, or they were still there. So I'll read this and then I will close this episode, because I think it's enough of a comeback to make. Okay. And I Just to preface it, I have not reread it. At the edge of my sanity, I wonder, how does my inner world look like today? I haven't visited in months. I wonder how my heart feels like. I wonder if I still remember how to get there. I believe I do. I believe the scariest part about going there is having to stand for it. It's one thing to be self aware, another thing entirely to own it, to not separate oneself from it and give it a name, an id, the ego, the self, the sub this, the other, the not here and now. What I'm slowly coming to realize is that in being an instrument, one can also not quite control the product of the tune that comes out when in play. When we flow, we simply are, in effect. We make sound, motion, music, patterns, and replication extend from our existence, if only to produce a representation of an implosive, explicit inner formula. We cannot possibly help who we are. There is no need to change. Rather, the need is in simply being, exactly that which we are in fullness. But to live in fullness in today's world means to operate within ways of being predetermined. Train tracks beaten into the earth, solidified. This is the best way to be. And systemically, it makes sense. Generations before us have walked down the thread of this DNA cycle and mental patterns only to know that this is indeed the right ways to be. The right things to do, the right things to say, the right things to grow into. We operate the living space easier this way. Not that there is another space to operate on, I wouldn't say, but that the purpose of this DNA storage we naturally come with is exactly to store and to remember what is the better, easier, simpler, faster path to the goal. And then execute it. And I love that it connected to what I said earlier. I love it when this happens, really. Though this code, this execution factors in the natural self, in its natural state of being, it is truly the systemic expectation that apply the boundaries. Interesting. Let me read that again. Though this code, this execution, factors in the natural self in its natural state of being, it is truly the systemic expectations that apply the boundaries. So even though we're operating as, that's I guess what I was trying to say, even though we're operating like this execution, in execution of that code, it does factor in the natural self. The boundaries are predefined by those expectations of the system on us. So society, family, whatever world we live in, right? Let me put it this way. A flute can play any note in any infinite amount of combinations of tunes to play, yet the rules by which it plays can be dictated by a piece of paper or song, a predetermined set of notes that play on repeat. Interpret it. The worst is when we surrender to the tunes felt right by that of the other, and copied over into our own original experience. We do this oftentimes when something feels right. We stick to it. Yet it is as if we override our own soul. And to at least identify where this is useful and detrimental remains our core responsibility, our brain's purpose in existence. And then I say, okay, I'm clearly exhausted. I'm going to go rest. And I end with, everything will fall into place. It always does. And in the end, there's a note scribbled postscriptum. It says, hey, Agnes, I love you. You deserve to be happy in this existence. That's why you exist. To be. So just be. And it'll always be. All right. That was it. Interesting. Thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in to this new episode completely out of the blue. I hope you enjoyed it and may you find something in this flow to feed into yours. And see you soon.